I think we have a very esteemed panel here talking of something which is extremely important. I mean, when we talk of technology, the first thing that comes to our mind in terms of technology is the medical equipments. And this is what we are discussing today. So without wasting time, my first question to you, Mr. Guruswamy, is that what is your insight on the medtech segment in India? You know, when we are talking of, when we compare the Indian industry with the global industry, how is India different, or manufacturing in India different from what happens across the globe?
Yeah, that's a very big question, but we'll just try to take it as in smaller pieces as possible. And we all know the numbers. Globally, medtech, medical devices is $550+ billion industry, significantly dominated by the US and the Europe. 70% of the market comes from there, and then you have the big countries like China, Japan. India is around $11.5 billion kind of a market, right? And we are roughly around 2% of the total global market at this point in time. Whereas in terms of population, we are probably number one. So that's the kind of potential that we have. As far as healthcare is concerned, you can hypothetically assume that everybody who's living around here is potentially a consumer in some form of healthcare services. So if you take it that way, it's a huge opportunity for India. If you just try and tie it up with some of the known numbers that we all know right now. I mean, if you look at one of the common numbers that we look at, the percentage of healthcare spend, healthcare spend as a percentage of GDP. You'll see very clearly the disparity. US, for example, is at roughly around 18 to 19%. And you take any European countries, they'll be around 10 to 11%. And even China is around 5 to 6%, whereas we are roughly hovering around the 2% range. So that is one clear indication of where the disparity comes from, number one. So there are a couple of challenges as we speak now we see in India, which is one is 80% of our medical devices that come into this that we use in this country are imported. Only 20% probably is made in India. And the second important thing is, I can give you one very nice example. We all know X-rays, right? Now, if you walk into any primary health center, there'll be an X-ray machine. Can you believe that we do not have a manufacturing of an X-ray tube insert in India? Whereas an X-ray machine is so, I shouldn't use the word primitive, but it's so important at every single clinic, but we do not make them. And today we all know ultrasound scanners, for everything. Most of the things we go through a scan. We still do not make an ultrasound probe in India. So that is where we are, in terms of a lot of things like that. But the beauty is, over the last 10, 12 years, our market has been growing at a significantly aggressive pace. We are probably growing at 2.5 to 3 times the global, the CAGR rate as you call, right? Now we are growing at around 14-15%. So that's a beauty. We've been growing significantly. Now, it's very interesting to look at, as I said, 80% is imported, right? And this is not something new to India. Only unique to India. If you look at any Southeast Asian country, any Middle East, African countries, most of them devices are imported into those countries. But if you look at countries like, I just want to take 2 or 3 examples, very interesting. Look at US, China, the European Union. They are probably, as far as medical devices concerned, they have reached a significant level in terms of the Atmanirbhar, in terms of the self-reliance is concerned. How did that happen? This is my perspective. If these countries, if we look at US, they set a very high entry standard. If you want to enter into the US market with the device, maybe an Indian device, you have to first go through an FDA, and you have to get an FDA 510(k) approval, which is not that easy for everybody to go through. What they did, they set a very high entry standard, and then they also parallelly spent a lot, focused a lot on innovation. One of the beauty in US is there's a tremendous collaboration between the industry, academia, and research, which created lots of innovations, within the US. If you look at the way startups work with the academic institutions, research institutions, and in large companies, the big names that you can name, they all work very closely with the academia and the research. That is something which they, in a structured manner, they enabled it. That is on the supply side. If you look at the demand side, they created this beautiful insurance scheme. If you want to get into the US market, all that you need to do is to ensure that the product that you want to sell is a part of the insurance code or you get an insurance code. Then a lot of things become easy. So they made it very, very structured, right? They created a very high entry barrier, as you can call. They fostered, they really enabled innovation. They also enabled a lot of supply, demand side structural reforms. China, the other end of US, they went very aggressive. It's not very easy to get into China, the Chinese regulatory approval. It's more difficult than FDA today. You'll have to literally open up everything and show your technology to them if you want to get approval. So similarly with Europe, if you look at, and China, the other beauty is on the demand side again, there's so much of government intervention. There's so much of priority given to the Chinese device manufacturers in China. You cannot, the Chinese healthcare institutions cannot buy a non-Chinese product so easily. So much of structured support and enabling factor has been created. European Union, they're so unified, so common that if you get one CE mark, you can sell anywhere in the Europe. So the commonality among all these who have reached a very high level of Atmanirbhar, if you look at, there's significant government intervention. There's a very high entry standards that they have created. They all focus a lot on innovation, both on the technology side as well as on the market side. So this is how most of them have reached. As far as India is concerned, we have just started this journey. Through lots of these government initiatives that is coming up now, through various schemes that come up, we all know the schemes. We've just started. We are on a catch-up mode now. We have a long way to go. But is it impossible? Absolutely not. Because we have done it in the past in automotive. We have done it in the services industry, in IT industry. We have done it in the pharma. We have heard so much of stories, pharma. So it's not impossible. But it's just that needs a very, very concerted, approach. There are lots of discrete initiatives that have come up now, the PLIs, setting up the clusters, healthcare clusters, plenty of discrete initiatives. But I think what we need is a very, very concerted approach to take this to the next level and grow the Indian market to the significant. We want to become a $50 billion by 2030. That needs a significant government role to be played. And industries also have a role to play in terms of focusing more on R&D, avoiding the shortcuts that we typically tend to take because of various other reasons, and invest a lot in our R&D and focus on innovation, etc. So that's how we are at the moment, but it's a very, very exciting road ahead.
Awesome. Dr. Vishal Rao, one aspect is of the manufacturers of the medical equipment, but their success depends on the acceptability of Indian-made equipment. From as a healthcare provider's space, how comfortable are you in purchasing Indian equipment versus what is being imported?
I think already Mr. Guruswamy has laid a lot of basic information on this. But I also come from the other side that I'm an inventor. I have a few medical devices I've invented. So I've gone through this journey. And with me is Geetha ji, who also is an inventor. So when I look at it from both sides, I think my learning has been that this is the time for India, and the next 20 years are for India. I think the way we are, the knowledge base, the academia, industry, and the government collaborations is something that is going to set new benchmarks for the world. Mm-hmm. The intellectual capacity is rising in a phenomenal way. And the acceptance of Indian equipments is happening very, very positively. And the reason is we are also complying to global standards. Mm-hmm. We are realizing now that we are not just going to be a local Indian player. If you look at even the CDSCO norms today, and I was just some time back interacting with the CDSCO office, and historically post-COVID, I think it's going to be a much big game changer. But even pre-COVID, the regulatory frameworks have actually they've upped their games to standards that compete with international standards. Mm-hmm. So that means that if you clear the Indian regulatory market, you will be open to at least 40 countries. Mm-hmm. So for an innovator, I'm saying for a medical device innovator of India, he now, while CDSO, he is given a lot of respect that once he clears it, he is actually open to not only one, but maybe about 40 countries. Mm-hmm. And his next benchmark should be CE marking, which is where, sir, again re-emphasized that CE is an important, new, slightly higher benchmark. We were version 1, they are in version 5 possibly. And US FDA is a much complex barrier which people are re-questioning today on saying, do we have to go that route at all? Because if with CE and Indian regulatory authorities like this, if you're open to 140 countries, I think that's a big market for you to cover.
Right. Geetha ji, I want to come to you now. You know, you and Dr. Vishal Rao have invented certain medical equipments. How do you see the R&D space in India in terms of being able to get the approvals and being able to innovate and create products that will find acceptability in the market?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's a great topic to debate at the right time. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Geetha, founder and CEO of Niramai, where we have developed a new method of detecting breast cancer. And it's by far, sir, the only novel device made in India who has got approval from both US FDA, CE mark, and of course CDSCO and other countries in Asia as well. So this journey, Mr. Narula sir, is actually been a very, very challenging journey in the last 6 years to come to a stage where we can take an Indian product and have some US FDA saying, yes, it is usable for us, right? So in that regard, I think first and foremost to figure out the right kind of collaborators and consultants for US FDA or CE mark, right? That itself was a major problem, because we did work with many Indian consultants. They are brilliant, but there are not many devices or predicate devices or even other companies who have done this before. So we had to do, and I was doing it for the first time, so it's not like I knew it. So we had to go with a consulting firm outside and understand ourselves, because many times when you're developing a novel device, it's not really about here is a specification, go file it, right? It's also about what are the nuances of the regulatory body, and can I tweak my product to suit the regulatory requirements? You know, can I tweak my intended use? Can I, like, there is innovation during regulatory clearance, you know, which is something I never ever imagined. I thought regulatory clearance would be like the quality, you give it, you write some forms and it's done. No, there is actual product innovation that happens during the regulatory clearance. It's a huge mind-boggling revelation I got. And so we have a different product for, like, variant of a product for US and things like that. And then, so that's sort of one aspect, right? So having some good people to go to who have done this before or who can guide us in this. And of course, you can directly go to US and, consultants who have done this before, but they will not be affordable for a startup like us. But thankfully, we found somebody who can help out because we had learned the hard way. So the one thing that I want to mention for those of you in the group here, or who know somebody like a startup who wants to do US FDA, is US FDA provides a simple, free, process for getting feedback about your device from US FDA, essentially. That is called a pre-submission process. It's completely free. The only thing is you spend a lot of time building that application for that, but that's sort of really worth it to see what it is. As Dr. Vishal Rao was mentioning, CDSCO is also improving a lot. Their standards are almost becoming like CE mark. So when we got the CE approval, we had to give the technical file and so on. The same file, we had to actually submit it to the new CDSCO requirement. So that's very welcome as well. So there are lots of things I can talk about, but one of the main things I want to just leave people with is, especially when you're trying to do a medical device for clinical decision support, right? So there what happens, the clinical efficacy or a systematic clinical study of showing that your device works, it becomes so important. Again, you need hospitals who to come forward to do this clinical research. And again, Dr. Vishal is, I think you head the HCG clinical research as well, right? So we have very few hospitals who come forward to do this innovation. It's like a co-innovation, literally. Trying to compare your device with the current standard of care and proving in a prospective setting that it's actually working. So if there are hospitals here, please consider clinical research. It's a great opportunity to show that your hospital, you can make you famous internationally because you'll be publishing with this and so on as well.
This is a very, very important aspect that you brought up. I'm going to ask you about this after I've spoken with Dr. Urvashi. And the reason I kept Dr. Urvashi's comments for the last was, when we have everybody's perspective from the industry, that is when somebody from the government can actually respond by talking about what is it that the government is thinking or intending to do to overcome the challenges that the medical equipment manufacturers are facing today and create an atmosphere of acceptance among the purchasers?
Yeah, I think you keep the most difficult question for me, Harbinder ji. But no, I think this panel is actually happening at a very interesting time when also the government has just announced the new medical devices policy. I've been had the opportunity to be involved with that and some of the work that's been happening behind the scenes. So I'll just very briefly, because the other panelists have already covered so much, I'll just very briefly touch upon from the policy point of view some of the work that we're trying to do. I think one is that from the government's point of view, we are very clear that we don't want to just make in India, we do want to innovate in India. And that includes the high-end devices, that includes the more complicated devices, because that's where our import dependency is the highest. We want to innovate in India, for India and for the world. I think that is something that we're very clear about. The other is that we see NCDs, non-communicable diseases, and it's interesting that ma'am is here and she's talking about breast cancer. We see NCDs as a very big opportunity. And in fact, we've been studying a lot of the innovations that have been happening, not just in the US or in more advanced economies, but closer home, say in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, which is really using Internet of Things, for instance, to come up with advanced monitoring and tracking for NCDs. So we see that as a big opportunity area in the government. So I think those are two things that just at the outset I would highlight. On the policy side, we're working on multiple fronts. I think one is clearly ease of doing business. I think that is really at the top, and that is where we constantly reach out to innovators, those who are working in the industry, to learn about their challenges. And we definitely want to, improve the ease of doing business situation, as far as the sector is concerned. And that includes, the fact that we have multiple stakeholders that you need to go to for approvals. We do want to ease all of that, not just at the central level, but also at the state levels. Another very important part is, of course, investing in research and development, as I said, but also building brand India. What is brand India for medical devices? We talk of trust, we talk of various other elements. So that is something we're very focused on. And lastly, I would just say that on skilling, because you do need to build human resource capacity for the sector. At every level. So skilling is another area, skilling for medtech. It's also articulated in the policy, but that's another big area that we're actually working on. So just wanted to highlight few of these major areas that we're working on the policy front.
Right. Mr. Guruswamy, one of the questions that I really want to ask you is, being a medical equipment manufacturer and, manufacturing in India, what are the challenges that you are facing when it comes to approval of equipment?
Yeah, so, there are, in India, of course, unfortunately, till a few years back, anybody could sell a machine. There was no regulatory framework that was existing. With IMDR and the CDSCO coming into force now, we see a very, very positive movement, very, very clearly. And I think it was much needed. It's great that it has come up because, the moment you go through a framework like this and qualify your products, there's a lot of confidence that develops among the customers. One of the biggest reason, if a customer in India, as a doctor, I think you asked this question to Dr. Vishal, if I have a choice to buy a product, an imported version versus Indian product, same equivalent, I think I may be making a controversial statement, but 80% of the doctors would choose an imported one because, you hear the jargons of CE marked, FDA approved product, made in so-and-so country, etc. Fundamentally because of the brand that they have created and regulatory compliance. So it's very important for us to have this regulatory framework, and I think we should make all the effort as an industry. We should work very closely with the government to create this particular framework, evolve this framework, and sync it with some of the global frameworks, right? Now, if we have, for example, if we have a CDSCO approval, I don't think there is any need for us to go and take a CE mark, CE certification, or an ANVISA to sell in Brazil. We should evolve this system to that level. Today, a European company with a CE certificate can sell in most of the countries, probably except US and China. All the other countries would accept it. We should evolve to that stage, and I think we should work together, do that. That's the right approach. Having said all that, to address straight away your question, what are the challenges we face? Since this system is evolving now, CDSCO, as Indian manufacturers, we are going through troubled times, because you have, I was very glad to hear when Dr. Urvashi said that ease of doing business will simplification. I think that is most needed now. We do have, I'll take one example, right? If you want to sell an X-ray machine in India, you need an AERB approval, and then you need a BIS approval. You also need a CDSCO approval. Whereas in Europe, if you develop a product, you just need one CE approval. In Europe, in US, you just need one FDA, and in China, one NMP. That's it. Right? I think there is opportunity for us to simplify this, streamline, put everything together, and make it a single window approval system, which is quite possible, because most countries are moving towards that today. There is a consortium of countries like US, Canada, Brazil, Australia, and I think Japan. They are all moving towards a unified regulatory approval process called MDSAP, which is Medical Device Single Approval Process. Which if you get one approval, you can sell in all these countries. So we should move towards that. That's a challenge we go through at this point in time. I can understand it is evolving, so we are going through that. But we do have these challenges with in CDSCO itself. If you look at, there are 6 or 7 licenses that we need to get as a manufacturer to take the product to the market. From the time you make a prototype, you have an approval process. Manufacturing, you have a license, and then for warehousing, you have a license. So all these are going through evolution phase, but earlier we need to work. We have a large role to play as industry. If we can work together with the government and create those, it will definitely be a great breakthrough to have a system like this in India. So we are going through some initial teething trouble, but we're all hoping that we will see the other side of it very quickly.
I've just received a note saying wrap up, but Dr. Vishal Rao, I want to ask you one question. A lot of these young founders and creators of medical equipment are creating an equipment, and after creating an equipment, they go to a hospital for a trial run, and they have very few people who are willing to try that equipment out. Where are they missing out? You've developed equipment. Fortunately, you were working in a hospital, you're a doctor yourself. But where are these young entrepreneurs missing out that they don't find acceptance for even clinical trials?
So I'll wrap it up with 2 quick points. I think he's already covered one of it. The importance is when like he said, 80% of them will choose a Western brand. The branding is more. I think one of the important points here is data. I think good data, and here Geetha will agree to me that good data is vital. A good publication is vital to show and believe patient, because nobody as a clinician would want to put their patients in front for a device or something that is not going to be beneficial or may give them a result that is not validated. So it's very important for us to first focus on that and build up that kind of an ecosystem where the youngsters are knowing on how do we get good relevant data, and that's where ecosystems are coming together. Ethics committees, scientific committees, encouraging hospitals to come and innovate. I think there are many hospitals within this ecosystem. And second, I think defining the question correctly. There is a hurry, I see. I'm a part of the vision group for Government of Karnataka here. I see a desperate hurry to push technology. I keep saying fund R&D, fund research, fund science, wait, there will be a leap in technology. Don't get obsessed with technology. The hurry of trying to push technology over science is going to give us the problem of what we're going to face of redundancy of some things that we don't need, because we've created a solution for which a problem doesn't exist. And I think I'll stop at that.
Absolutely. I think, that's a great point to close this conversation on this topic. And I completely agree with you that sometimes we are in a hurry to create products. And, I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of startup founders and experts like you. And one of the things that I find missing is when people start manufacturing, especially the non-medicos who start manufacturing medical equipments, they do not keep the medical professionals engaged during the development stage. So they've already lost that trust which could have developed during the development rather than taking the equipment for an approval little later. With that, I'd like to end this panel right here because we have other programs lined up. But this is such an important topic, and I thank each one of you for taking out time to be with us to discuss this. Maybe next time we could discuss it even more detail. Thank you so much, everyone.